A very pleasant good afternoon to all of our viewers, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk. We are delighted to be with you on Let's Talk this afternoon. We have a very important lineup today. We are going to be discussing Christian education with a particular emphasis on the University of the Southern Caribbean. We will talk about that a lot more in a minute, but before we get into that, let us just bow our heads forward of prayer. Eternal Father and our God, we thank you for the opportunity to share again another Let's Talk. We pray for your wisdom, your grace, and your guidance. Be with our guests in a very special way. Grant that the connectivity over the internet will prove faultless, and help that all of our viewers will be able to get good reception. Take full control and have your own way in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, friends, as indicated, we are this afternoon discussing the very important subject of Christian education with a particular emphasis on the whole matter of the University of the Southern Caribbean. Some of you older ones may know it as CUC, Caribbean Union College. We're going to get into some details of that. I have the president of the university. Along with him today, we have two other individuals. I shall introduce them to you, or perhaps I will ask Dr. Wilson. Let me introduce him first. Our university president is Dr. Colwick Wilson. He is a man of vast experience, having served in various places in the United States. He once worked at Loma Linda University. He worked at Michigan State University. He last, before coming to the Caribbean, back to the Caribbean, he served, I believe, as the provost of the University, Oakwood University. We are delighted to have Dr. Colwick Wilson with us this afternoon. Doc, good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon, Dr. Greene, and it's a privilege to be here in Tobago, joining live on Let's Talk. You know, I really enjoy Let's Talk. I listen to it often, and I'm fascinated by the fact that I'm able to join today. Good afternoon, sir.
Well, we are delighted to have you, Dr. Wilson, and you have two very important persons with you this afternoon. I believe you have your provost. We're going to ask you to introduce him at this time.
Yes, I have my friend and colleague, Dr. Len M. Archer. Dr. Archer is a native of Tobago and attended the University of the West Indies and Indiana State University, where he completed a PhD in microbiology. He served for many years at Advent Health University, and for most of those years, he served as an administrator. We're happy to have him at the University of the Southern Caribbean as the provost of our university. And then we have Chaplain Rachel Seeley. I call her Chap. Chaplain Seeley is a proud national of the Twin Island state of Trinidad and Tobago. She's a licensed and ordained chaplain. She's also an adjunct lecturer in family studies at the University of the Southern Caribbean. And most recently, she authored a book entitled Finding Your Missing Piece, Dealing with Loss. She's also a marriage and family therapy and couple therapist, and the founder of Marriage That Shines, a marriage enrichment program. Rachel Chap, as I call her, is a lover of young people and a deeply spiritual person who inspires me often, actually inspires me all the time. I'm happy to work with her and enjoy the privilege of sitting as she ministers. Thank you, Dr. Greene.
Well, it is indeed a a privilege to be on Let's Talk with Chaplain Seeley. Chaplain Seeley and I spent some time in CUC together back then in, I believe, the late 1980s, very early 1990s. Good afternoon, Dr. Chaplain Seeley.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here and to be on this program with my president and provost. And I'm looking forward to the discussion that will ensue.
Okay,
Thank you
wonderful.
for having me.
Indeed. Now, we have just a few minutes to talk about a lot of things. And so we are going to get into this important discussion. As I indicated, this afternoon, we are talking about Christian education with a particular emphasis on USC. Well, before we get into the discussion on the University of the Southern Caribbean, I would like for us to begin by considering some elements of Christian education. Why is the emphasis on Christian education so significant? Dr. Wilson, perhaps I can begin with you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Greene. You know, Christian education is an investment into our young people and of all ages, but particularly our young people. It's an investment in their ability to be productive members of society and also have a worldview that includes the fact that we believe that this life is not all there is to it. And so there's a twofold value. They're better prepared to be citizens in this world. They're less likely to engage in criminal behavior. They're less likely to be in prison. They're more likely to be successful on their jobs. There are a lot of positive outcomes that usually mature over time because of the values that are embedded in Christian education. I think from those two perspectives, employers in this world find them very attractive. And we believe in the comfort of knowing that there's more beyond this life.
I know that Dr. Archer worked at Advent Health before. Well, I believe he's retired now. Well, was back then from Advent Health and now serving as provost at the university there. But Dr. Archer, I believe you studied, you matriculated elsewhere outside of the Christian environment. How do you compare the Christian campus with the non-Christian campus?
Well, I graduated from the University of the West Indies here in Trinidad, and I have to tell you that I don't have a lot of the experience of the typical student at a public university campus by my going to UWI. I also went to Andrews, and then I went to another public university for my PhD, Indiana State, which by the time I got there, I was married with kids, and we are a little older, and we don't have the kind of association of the campus. But it's interesting that I'm on the University of the West Indies as a student, but I lived in the dorm of CUC for 2 years. I lived off campus for a couple of years, but in the years that I didn't live on campus, my life was on the Adventist campus. So I have to say my spiritual moorings were tethered to the Adventist campus, my experience. And when I look at many of my colleagues who went to the University of the West Indies around the time I was there, many of whom I have no recall of because I never had many friends there. I had very, very few friends, certainly not non-Adventist friends. And all the friends I had there who were Adventists are, as I can recall, are pretty much involved in the church to some degree. But for me, it does make it very difficult, at least to give that experience when I was a young student at the University of the West Indies. However, my experience at Indiana State University although I didn't live in the dorm, I lived in my student housing. I was a graduate student, and we graduate students didn't have much time for any social activity or so. I still experienced in some way through some of the students I taught at Indiana State, the kind of a relationship that they had, social relationships that they had, knowing people, knowing some of my students, actually counseling some of my students. And looking back at it, I have to admit that the experience I observed there was socially and morally pretty bad. And as a result, I have to conclude that the experience at an Adventist or spiritually related Christian campus is by far the most superior experience for any young person who wants to go to college.
Well, I know that Chaplain Seeley has spent a good bit of her life on the campus of the university there in Trinidad. I had the privilege of hearing her preach when she shared a testimony of her origins in terms of the connection to Adventism. How when you think of where you are today, Chaplain Seeley, and how would you say the experience at USC helped to chart your course in life?
Well, you said most of my life. I would say all of my life. I have been through the 3 institutions there, the primary level, secondary level, and the university level. And now I work there. So really, you can say all of my life is centered around Christian education. And as you talk about my testimony, I came from the village that is directly opposite the university, a very humble village, one where people don't really expect much of you. You were expected to go to high school and then, just exit at some point in time. But because of the proximity of the university and God placing a desire in my heart to go to university, it has totally changed my life. The opportunities that I was afforded, the connections, the people, my peers, had I not had that opportunity of Christian education, I could have seen myself going in a different direction. In fact, I have to share that at some point in my life, I really got tired of the Christian education environment and wanted to rebel as such, having gone to the high school and everything. And it's because, and I saw myself actually trying to exit, but my mother, insisted that I continue on. And it's because of that, I believe the opportunities that have been open to me, my connection with God certainly has been solidified because of that Christian experience and that Christian education.
Now I'm in a little hurry, Dr. Wilson, for us to get into some details about USC. We may have to come back another week. I think we're going to have a challenge to discuss all that I want us to discuss just in today's program. But I'm really I do have to ask you a similar question though, because you taught at Oakwood, you taught at Michigan State. I believe you also studied at Michigan State at some point in time, and you also taught at Loma Linda, and now you are president of USC. The experience teaching in a non-Christian university versus teaching at a Christian university, how does that compare?
Yeah, thank you, Doc. Indeed, I because of the rivalry between Michigan State and University of Michigan, I must say I attended University of Michigan, and go blue. The experience of teaching at a University of Michigan's type of school versus teaching at Loma Linda or being at Oakwood and now at USC, vastly different. So at the University of Michigan, for starters, you can't pray, and even if you attempt to pray, you know, that you will be in a serious situation. Whereas even though Loma Linda, for example, we had a significant number of non-Adventists, the expectation was one of engaging and seeking divine guidance. I think also what I found with the students at, let's say, University of Michigan, as compared to Loma Linda and elsewhere, was that there was an emphasis on the academics only. At the other schools, there was more an emphasis on life and academics as a part of life. And what has happened over time is that those students who I taught at Loma Linda, even though they weren't Adventists, they have embraced the lifestyle of Adventism. As against the University of Michigan, they're just in there for the knowledge and information. And it's amazing what happens to them over time. They struggle with demonstrating or experiencing meaning in life, even after they're very successful. So I find that a fascinating difference, among others.
Yeah, it sounds rather very interesting indeed. Now, I want to ask another question here again before we get into USC proper, and be patient. We're going to get there, even if it's next week. But some may ask if going to a Christian school is any different from going to a Seventh-day Adventist Christian school. What's your perspective? You know, I've had people tell me, well, you know, yeah, you talk about Christian education, and you talk about Adventist Christian education. Does it make a difference, do you think, if a person wishes to go to a Catholic school or a Baptist school versus a Seventh-day Adventist school?
Well, one of the things I would say, just to start off, and I know Doc would jump in, is the unique set of theology that we have in the Seventh-day Adventist institutions. It certainly is different from the general Christian perspective. So the unique theological perspective is one of the differences that would be, you know, as you compare Christian education and Seventh-day Adventist education.
Indeed.
Well,
yes,
Dr.
Doc, go ahead.
I am biased. I am a Seventh-day Adventist Christian. And with that comes a set of convictions about why I am a Seventh-day Adventist. And maybe that's for another program. But let's accept the fact that for me, being a Seventh-day Adventist Christian means a commitment to a certain set of dogmas, a certain understanding of my theological orientation. And so, for example, when I was, I think, faculty by the University of Michigan, we struggled to find a school, Adventist school, where our kids could go attend high school. But one of the things that I found is that we actually worked with them to get into a Baptist school. And so we interacted with a school, and we were happy that they had Christian values. But the values they had, for example, the values that they had with regards to the Sabbath. The Sabbath is fundamental to my understanding of the biblical doctrine of rest and creation and all of that. So the way we teach those truths, those biblical truths, are different to the way that school taught those truths. And while I don't want to get into the details of it, it was clear that our orientation to Christian practice is somewhat different from general Christian educational institutions and how they seek to enforce those practices with young people.
You know, I can say that USC, well, in my day, CUC was the first Adventist institution that I attended. And I still remember my first class. I speak about it often because for the first time in my life, I was having prayer at the beginning of a class. And that really was a significant impression on my mind, you know. Now I want to jump to Dr. Archer. Dr. Archer, you did molecular biology. You know, that is an area that I remember I had you on Let's Talk way back in the early beginnings of the COVID pandemic. And you and I believe it was Dr. Stevens who were explaining the whole concept of vaccination and how that works, etc. Now, my question to you is very different today, however. Higher education is a priority. You know, we would easily see that as something significant. At the same time, many of our young people, and especially young men, are not availing themselves of higher education. There may be reasons, you know, such as economics, but what can you say to impress or motivate our youths, you know, Adventist young people who are listening to this program today? What can you say to motivate them to pursue higher education?
That's a very good question, and I might begin by just saying that seems to be a problem all over the Western world, or at least in the United States and the Caribbean, where the numbers of men in general, not just Adventist men in general, is significantly less, lessening, reducing. Every year it seems less and less males enter college and graduate. Many of those who enter never graduate; they drop out and so on. So that's of concern. But in general, I think it is important for our Adventist men in the Caribbean for several reasons. One, it gives them the opportunity to experience a socialization that they won't get just staying at home for the most part. It exposes them to academic training that they won't get just staying at home, not going to school. And we also know, and Dr. Wilson can probably give you more of the statistics because this is in the realm of sociology, that for the average individual, we know that lifespan is increased and directly related to education. Health is directly related to education. These are other benefits that you get simply by availing yourself of the educational experience. Undoubtedly, most of us know that coming to a Christian college like this gives us an opportunity for a good spouse. Many of us can talk about that. But just the opportunity to engage in the spiritual circle and getting a better understanding of how we individuals in the eyes of God and our role in society is developed and experienced is a major benefit. And so, you know, many of our young people say, well, you know, I'm not sure I know what I want to do. Well, even when you're not sure what you want to do, just coming to college exposes you to the opportunities that you can make a decision about what you want to do. So those are just a few of the experiences, and I would advise any young person it may seem like a sacrifice. In fact, it's an increasing sacrifice, it seems, in today's society. But many of us who went to school earlier, if I was at UE and the cost of education then wasn't as it was at CUC, I still worked, and it gives you the sense of work, the work experience to help yourself as you grow, as you mature. So these are very critical values that every young person ought to have.
You know, I every now and then I meet persons who I attended CUC with. And when we talk, when we reflect on the good old days of CUC, we like to say, you know, it brings a certain sense of pride just to be able to associate. So we want to go now to talking about USC, the University of the Southern Caribbean. I believe, I could be wrong here, but correct me if I am, but I do believe that CUC, USC is one of the oldest academic institutions in the region. Dr. Wilson, can you talk about that a little bit and tell us, when was the university established? And we're going back to before university, back to CUC, to Technical Training College, etc. How old is the institution?
We're 96 years old this year. So we began on August 27th, 1927, here in Maracas Valley. And so in 2027, we would have celebrated 100 years of existence in Trinidad and Tobago and in the Eastern Caribbean. While we are not the oldest strictly defined tertiary educational institution, we're the oldest institution in Trinidad and Tobago that began and continues to grow from a college. So Eastern Caribbean Training School to Caribbean Training College to Caribbean Union College. And then in 2006, 17 years ago, we became the University of the Southern Caribbean. So we have been around longer than other institutions on the island within that frame, and we're excited. Every time you give me a chance to talk about 2027, I say, Lord, keep me alive so that I can be there to experience the centennial celebration. We've been around for a long time.
Now, I'm also looking forward to that centennial celebration in 2027. I like to say I'm a proud graduate of CUC or USC. Back then, it was a relatively small institution with affiliation to Andrews University in Michigan. Now it's a full-fledged university. Things have changed a lot since then. Can you tell us what USC has to offer today, and how does it compare with other institutions in Trinidad and Tobago and in the region?
Well, I'm sure my colleagues have much to say on this topic because we're convinced that it has a distinctive space in the educational economy in the region. So for starters, I think USC, and I don't think this fact can be overemphasized, USC has a certain brand of experience that is unlike others. And I think Dr. Archer nailed it when he talked about his experience affiliated with USC. But at the core of it, if we were to look at empirical evidences, what happens in a school like USC is that there's more an emphasis on social relationships. And what we know is that over time, and even in the near term, social relationships are good for your health. They're good for longevity. They're good for your quality of life. Social isolation is a challenge. And in these other institutions, what happens, because there's not that emphasis on social relationships, even while students are in school, they're socially isolated. So there's a tendency of having higher rates of suicide, for example, in those contexts, as against in our system. You will see very low, close to zero, not ideation, but completion of suicide among our students. So I think the long-term investment in this holistic view of life and education is something that is protective for people's health and is enhancing of their well-being and makes them even more effective citizens, even as we prepare for the kingdom. We don't compromise on the quality of our education. I have known, including myself, individuals who have left USC and have attended Harvard University, Oxford University, the top universities in the world, and have been very successful, not necessarily because they had all of the technological and the advances that that particular field may have had. But because we were provided with an orientation to education that heightened the value of education, and what happens is that you put these students in that context, even if they didn't have all of the computer labs or all of the labs that would enhance their preparedness for advanced education, because they were prepared mentally and their orientation was driven by the fact that we, not by might, nor by power, but by spirit, but my God shall supply all your needs, that if any man lacks wisdom, let him ask of God. Those orientation that may seem very trivial actually propel them to the top of the class if they weren't there when they began.
Well, when we think of CUC as a Christian institution, the spiritual component, I believe, is very important. And Chaplain Seeley is here, so I suppose she can give us a peep into what spiritual life is like on campus.
Okay. Just before I go to that, Dr. Carson, I just wanted to mention that I believe one of the advantages of the education at CUC, USC, that this institution compared to others is the teacher-student relationship. There is a high consensus from, in fact, from the data that we collect, that our students value the relationship that they have with their professors. In other institutions, they don't have that direct contact. They don't have that compassion. They don't have that relationship, and where professors are looking out for the students and where they build relationships with the students. And so I think one of the pluses, one of the advantages of our institution over other institutions, not in terms of the academics of it, but it is that student-professor relationship that is really contributes to the success of the students and to their outlook in life and their success at university. In terms of the spirituality and the spiritual programming, we definitely do have a strong spiritual program at the university that fosters the development of our students. Programs that includes and not only in terms of our face-to-face programs like chapels and church and worship sessions, but programs that include our students in direct service, programs that include students as missionaries and cause them to increase and to grow as spiritual leaders, that grows their spiritual leadership. Just last week, we had a program which was student-led actually, where the ASB and the student missionaries in the iConnect ministry collaborated to distribute food hampers and to host an open air within the Maracas Valley. So within the region of the Maracas, we had over 50-something students going out, distributing food hampers, going out, meeting the needs of persons, praying, and at the end of it, hosting an open air in an area that is really high in terms of crime and criminality, and bringing hope to the community members there. And so this is some of the on-hand sort of programming that we have. The chapel services, the worship services, the prayer in the classroom, all of that is still alive, Carson, from when we were there, whether it was just around 500 at that time, and now it's thousands. It is still present and still being outrolled from the University of the Southern Caribbean. And I'm proud to say that, I've known it at the early stage, and now that I am involved as one of the leaders in that area, I am still proud to see that we are still holding fast to that spiritual moorings that we have in terms of involving the students.
Can I add a comment?
I'm going to come to you in a minute, Dr. Archer, but I just wanted to stitch this in because I've had conversations with individuals who have attended CUC or USC, as the case may be. And, you know, it is interesting that not once, twice, but on many different occasions, I hear them saying it was only when I got to USC or CUC that my spiritual life began to take shape. When I engaged in the chapel sessions and the spiritual activities, that it really pulled me into getting serious with God, you know, some early morning hour of power and those kinds of things. So I think that, to me, is very telling. I want to go to Dr. Archer, or is it Dr. Wilson? Which one of you? I'm not sure who was commenting there, but
it was me.
Yes, go
yes.
ahead.
Just a quick comment. In the United States, and where I worked in a lot of institutions, we do various assessment tools to determine, or at least to assess student life and student experience and student perceptions. I suspect Oakwood must have done that too with you, Dr. Wilson. But it's called NESSE, the National Survey for Student Engagement. And it's a survey that's done by a lot of institutions. And we also do have questions. We, the Adventist cohort of institutions in the United States, usually have a group of questions that are sort of unique to us. But overall, some of the questions look towards student perceptions and student feelings of the institution and how the institution relates to them and teacher relationships and all that kind of stuff. And you can compare the results of your institution with other institutions across the United States. And always, the Adventist schools tend to have a much higher, at least student perception of engagement with their institutions, satisfaction. The satisfaction scores are generally higher. So it says something when we compare not only among ourselves, but among other institutions. And we have we usually do have comparisons within the healthcare cohort of schools, and many of them are not Adventist. Most of them are not Adventist, and even in those institutions, Adventist students often, irrespective of the other deficits that we may have, financial and so forth, we always rank higher than most of the other institutions around. So it says something about Adventist education.
Now there's a lot for us to talk about here, but I want to go back to what CUC has to offer. Can we maybe just academics? What are some of the academic disciplines? What can people get when they go to CUC or USC? I keep saying CUC, and I hope you can appreciate that. I have to get accustomed to in USC, right?
That's all right. Many of us who are around still stumble over those three letters. So I can say a little bit here. When I was around, there were very few choices. You came to CUC, do theology or education, teacher training, and we didn't have a bachelor's degree in anything else. It's different now. You can do virtually anything you want to prepare for, you can do it here.
Okay.
Sciences, social sciences, theology, education, you can do it here. You can get your start here, and a very good start at that.
All right, Dr. Wilson, you want to add anything to that? Unmute.
I agree. I agree with Dr. Archer because, I don't know, chap, if I would have done theology only if I were attending CUC now, because I did a number of courses in education because I was interested in education, but now you have degrees in education, elementary, you have areas with elementary education with specialization in special education. You have degrees in history. You have degrees in the health field. And nursing, for example, was nowhere where then. Actually, my wife went to NCU because CUC didn't have a nursing program. But now I would say we have a strong program of nursing at USC, maybe even stronger or as strong as NCU. And it gives students option, including graduate programs. And so we have online graduate programs in business, in education, in health. For example, our occupational therapy master's program is the only one of its kind in the region. And so we have a wide range of, as Dr. Archer said, wide range of areas that students, especially those in undergraduate degrees in computer science, for example, we have many more offerings, over 40-something degrees and close to 10 graduate programs here at USC. So we're much more diverse than we used to be.
And can I add, our music program is the absolute best anywhere around.
All right, interesting. Now, I was going to just ask either you, Dr. Archer, or Dr. Wilson, because I hear a lot about the nursing program, and I know nurses are in demand in Europe and in North America. And you're indicating that we have a very strong nursing program. Some persons want to, I don't want to put ideas in anybody's head now, but some persons they have an eye on America, and some persons may be concerned, if I study nursing in the Caribbean, would I get accepted in the US? Which one of you want to respond to?
I think both of us are eager to respond to that one. Because, and maybe I can start, because nursing, as you said, there's a shortage of nurses virtually around the world. It's much more chronic in the United States, for example, and it's a challenge in the Caribbean. And so what a lot of healthcare organizations are doing, they're investing in nursing and thereby investing in individuals who are nurses for a number of reasons. Nurses don't stay at the bedside as long as they used to. But now, with an emphasis on nursing education at USC, we're able to provide a world-class opportunity for our students. And Dr. Archer can expand on this, but when I came along with our sister institution at NCU, we decided to seek accreditation of our nursing program. Of course, we have accreditation locally and nationally, and soon regionally when the region gets to that point. But we decided that we wanted our program, nursing program, to be accredited internationally, that is in the United States of America. And I'm pleased to announce, I'm excited by the fact that individuals who graduate from our program beginning next year would be graduating from a program that is not fully accredited, but we are candidates for accreditation, which means that in 2 years, once we complete the process, our students will be technically grandfathered into an accredited program even from next year. But certainly, this program will give students more opportunities. So if you're listening to this program in the United States of America, you can get a Caribbean education that you can't get at the other places. Let's leave that alone. But you can come to the Caribbean, get a Caribbean education at lower cost, but higher value, and actually be able to practice in the United States once you pass the necessary exams. So we're excited about that development here at USC.
So what I hear you saying, Dr. Wilson, Dr. Archer, I'm going to come to in a minute, but what I hear you saying, Dr. Wilson, is that that accreditation that you speak of is going to mean that students who graduate with that particular nursing degree would be essentially graduating with a degree from a North American institution, so to speak.
So to speak, yes, an accredited nursing degree from the United States, so to speak.
Okay, yes. Dr. Archer, you were jumping in with something.
Yes, I want to talk a little bit about the accreditation, because the accreditation is one from one of the two major accrediting bodies in the United States. The ones that accredit almost every school across the United States. There are two major ones, and the one we're working with is one of those. So they won't be at any disadvantage. What nursing students do in the United States when they graduate from these institutions is that they have to pass the nursing board exams, the NCLEX exams, and then they can practice. Everybody has to do that. So attending the school is one, but this institution will produce students who are eligible for sitting the NCLEX exam. You can't sit the NCLEX exam if you're not from an accredited institution from one of these organizations. So that's very good. The other important thing is that we want to change the face of nursing in the Caribbean. And so we want to develop a nursing program here that will produce nurses that are of the highest quality, whether they leave here and go to the United States or whether they will stay here. We hope they will mostly stay here because we need them. And you can guarantee that that's the goal. As a matter of fact, I've had to interview several people over the last few months who were interested in teaching positions, either clinical or didactic here at USC. And to a man, I usually ask them, I said, have you encountered any of our students? And they will tell you that within the industry, the talk on the floor is that the people who graduate from USC are the best quality nurses that they have. Their attitude, the way they treat patients is better. I really want to do some surveys on that, Dr. Wilson, so that we can have some established data, so that it's not just word of mouth, but it's actually empirical information that we have. But yeah, that's our goal. And unfortunately, we don't have enough resources here for everybody. We don't have the clinical resources. We don't have the available hospitals where we can train everyone, because we have unfortunately had to put actually hundreds of students on a wait list because we couldn't get them in all at the same time. But they're coming because they know that this institution produces good nurses.
And I just looked at the time and realized we only have 5 more minutes. Doc, we're gonna have to continue this next week. I think there's so much more that I want to ask. But you were saying something. Go ahead.
In addition to what Dr. Archer and I have said, when applying to graduate nursing programs in the US or anywhere in the world, these students their degree would not be questioned in terms of admission criteria. So they can, when they have this degree from USC, they can go to Johns Hopkins, they can go to any major academic institution and matriculate into graduate doctoral programs. Also, we are looking to establish a simulation lab that is going to be the best on the island, which allows our students to experience simulated patient care in an environment which propels them into actual patient care at a rate that allows them to be much more successful. And so we're excited about what is happening at nursing at USC.
Now, I heard Dr. Archer saying that the USC has a music program that is second to none. And we don't have much time to talk about it, but Dr. Archer, can you comment on that a little bit more?
Well, you just have to listen to the quality of the orchestra and the concert band and so on that we produce here. And people can go online and judge for themselves. But you know, having lived in the United States for a while and listened to a lot of orchestras and so on, you know, unquestionably, we have a very, very, very good program. And I haven't heard, maybe they're there and I haven't heard them, but I haven't heard anything else in Trinidad that's as good as some of the music that we produced.
Right. You know, perhaps I'm presuming that you all are available for next week, but I'm going to say, perhaps when we come next week, you can prepared to show some video clips, about the university, about just as a demonstration of some of the things that are there. And because our time is just about expired, and I'm going to have to jump to this because somebody may be listening who may be saying, well, USC is out there. I haven't heard much about USC. How do I get information? So how do we get information? What's the web address? And if a person is interested and wants to apply, what do they do? Who is responding to that one?
Well,
Go ahead, Dr. Wilson.
Okay, I heard Chaplain Seeley, so go ahead, Chap.
Well, the university website, University of the Southern Caribbean, once they access that, they would be able to find information, admissions, documents, contact information. University of the Southern Caribbean is the website, and they will be able to access through that platform any of the necessary links that would lead them to application, lead them to talk with our intake officers and all of that. So once they get onto the website, definitely that would be the place that they can begin to search for information in terms of application and attendance.
So that is usc.edu.tt?
That's correct, yes.
There's
also a Facebook page. I think, yes, there's a Facebook page as well. Doc, yes?
There's a Facebook page, there's an Instagram page.
Right.
And I know that most of our young people are active on social media. So on all the media there, they can just search for USC and they can find information.
And YouTube also. So we're
and YouTube. Yeah.
Yes, that's under our name, University of the Southern Caribbean.
So information is out there, is available. We have a lot to talk about. I'll just mention some of the areas that I want to ask you about because the University of the Southern Caribbean is the main campus is in Trinidad. I understand you have 2 campuses in Trinidad, 1 in Tobago, etc. So we're going to talk about the various campuses and how do people from outside of Trinidad and Tobago access studying at USC. We have those things to talk about. We don't have the time to go into all of that and a whole lot more, Doc. So we definitely have to have a part 2 to this. But I want to give you each, starting with Chaplain Seeley, then Dr. Archer, then Dr. Wilson, just a 30 seconds to just say something in closing. Okay, I see Chaplain Seeley saying the web address is usc.edu.tt. You got that there. So, just something you want to leave with those who are listening. Chaplain Seeley.
Well, I want to say from someone who has been there for her whole entire life, who has been formed and forged from USC, certainly that experience is a wonderful experience. It's a family experience. It's one that would nurture you and one that would grow you, one that would expose you, to your spiritual growth and foster that spiritual nurturing, but as well as challenge you academically. One of the things that are really, that to me is very important in terms of that university experience is your peers, that peer experience that you're going to have. You're going to create lifelong friends. Dr. Greene said that, yeah, we go way back, and we still connect. And I would see persons, all over the Caribbean, all over, Europe, persons who we knew and have that connection. And so you have a home anywhere, you have a home anywhere. So it is such a wonderful experience. It is a home away from home. And I encourage persons to connect to USC, to apply to USC, because this could be your next best decision that you make.
And I see Dr. Archer has the photo of the valley in the background there. Dr. Archer.
Yes. You're looking for an education, you're looking for a well-rounded education, you're looking for an institution where students can interact with teachers who care about them, chaplains and fellow students as well. USC is the place to be. It is, you will certainly enjoy the experience. And I wish people will just take a look. We have some of the most loyal and hardworking faculty you will find anywhere. It, like most Adventist institutions, people who work here come here because they have a goal. They want to sacrifice something to train students to become the best people they can be. And you will find that here.
Dr. Wilson, your closing thoughts?
The best experience of my life. If I had to do it all over again, having attended major universities in the US, I would attend Caribbean Union College, University of the Southern Caribbean, again and again and again, for about 13 reasons. But let me give you 2 quick ones. One, lifelong friendships. We've talked about that all afternoon. Lifelong friendships. I've been away from the Caribbean for over 40 years now, and I haven't seen some of my friends. But now when I see them, it's as if it was 4 days ago we were separated. Students that I attended, the University of Michigan, for example, over 50,000 students. I can't remember 15 of them. And if I were to see them, it would be high and more connection with the university than connection with each other.
It appears that Dr. Wilson got disconnected briefly there.
On a right note, I would say.
Yes, he shared with us that, you know, that friendship. I believe Chaplain Seeley, you spoke about that as well.
Yes.
But we're going to have to wrap it up here. Perhaps we'll be back next week. In any case, Let's Talk will be on next week again. So we want to thank all of you so much for sharing with us this afternoon. And we will definitely have a part 2. So we look forward to that. It was a real privilege sharing with you, and may God bless you. Friends, remember, next week we are back here at 3 p.m. as usual. May God bless.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Most